Yes, it did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Well, thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Of course, tomorrow the jolly old elf will be coming down that chimney behind me, and because we don't know if he's been tested or not, we've set up some COVID-friendly measures just in case. Let's meet the panelists for this edition, starting with 50% of the Jennifer and Wendy show. She's Wendy Wiese from KTRS. Mr. Bill McClellan in his sartorial splendor. 'Tis the season from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Ray Hartmann from rawstory.com, the Big 550, and the Riverfront Times. And not to be outdone by Bill McClellan, Mr. Alvin Reid, looking good. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to all the Reids. And by the way, big news in the Reid household. Are we sharing that on this program tonight?
I guess we are now.
He doesn't have clearance.
Well, we could save it for another day.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. That's a cliffhanger for next week. Don't miss next week's show when Joe Halman will be here, by the way. Bill, before we begin, I do want to get a shout out to the Hill because a good friend of St. Louis needs some prayers and some good vibes out there. Am I right?
Yes, you are. Chris Gambaro, the patriarch of the Missouri Baking Company, the wonderful, historic, iconic bakery. Chris went in earlier this week at 3 a.m. to fire up the oven like he has done thousands of times, and there was an explosion, and Chris was badly burnt, and he is now beginning a recovery that we hope will be complete, but it will probably take some time, and our thoughts and prayers go out to Chris and his family.
For sure. Thank you for those kind thoughts. And we'll stick with you for our first topic, Bill. The mayor, Tashara Jones of the city of St. Louis, along with the St. Patrick's Center, is planning an intentional encampment, they call that, at First and Cass, just north of the Four Seasons and a couple of blocks away from Al's Restaurant. There's going to be, I guess, a homeless camp with about 40 units housing 40 homeless individuals. The details haven't been ironed out, but those are the broad outlines as reported locally. What do you think about this?
I think it's a good thing. You know, that's actually near where Hopeville, remember the unintentional campsite for homeless people was a few years ago, and Sparta was another camp right out there. And I think it's a good thing to help people and to have programs and services and give the people some place to go rather than sleeping in parks or under viaducts. I think it's a good thing, and I think the mayor is doing well. It's a good thing to do.
I hear you, Bill, and I agree with you. And I think that it works out to start small and see if it works. But I always do bring up, I said, like, okay, well, if I, do live there, or, my business is there, whatever, it's kind of like, I don't know that this is going to work out for me. So I can't be mad if somebody said, like, why here, kind of why now?
Well, actually, it's in kind of an industrial area anyway. I mean, it isn't like the riverfront has been developed. And so it's not going into a neighborhood or a public park. And I've always thought that, like, we should build barracks down along the river for homeless people.
Well, that's what, it's funny you say that. In my mind, and I don't mean to be like that, but it's kind of like you're like, what, kind of built bivouacking. This is where you're, like, you're sleeping on your cot, and we're just here.
As a matter of fact, there's a Department of Corrections facility not too far from there.
It's not too close to public transportation that I know of. They better get the security down. I mean, I think that's key for the sake of those there and around there. And there are some businesses there that haven't been talked to. They really haven't had much communication with some of the businesses down there, according to business owners that I talked to today. So one told me that she found out about it by, watching television last night.
I think that when you think of the spirit of this particular season, I think we should probably all try to be as open-minded as possible, and hopefully everything will go according to plan, because you hate to think of these people again being displaced if this looks like a reasonable alternative.
And both could be right. I mean, I think Bill's right. It's a good, it seems to be a very reasonable, you know, well thought out, at least well intended solution, or I don't know if solution's the right word, but it's progress. As to whether they communicated it well, that may be an issue. I don't know. But you know, I think Mayor Jones is doing the right thing for sure.
All right. Hey, Alvin, Reid, let's talk about the Land of Lincoln thing. Well, of course, many of our viewers are living in Illinois, but there wasn't good news this week, because for the 9th straight year, the state has lost population. And as a matter of fact, last year it set a record for the number of people who moved out, north of 120,000. And when you take a look at population in this country, which wasn't good last year, the country only increased population by 0.1% last year. But Illinois lost more people in both actual terms and in percentage terms than all but 2 other states. So what's going on with Illinois?
Well, nothing's going on with Illinois. I think what you say, you find your float or whatever. I think Illinois is finding how many people want to choose to live in Illinois, and it's still like the powerhouse of the Midwest. I mean, I can't see how I doubt Illinois' future with the Chicago and with the Corn Belt industry through there and everything going on. Illinois is going to be fine. I'm not even going to bring up the whole gambling and the whole,
marijuana,
cannabis, but light years ahead of us. It'll be fine.
I think the other 2 states mentioned in terms of losing population were New York and California, and I think a lot of that is pandemic related. I think a lot of people who live in big cities, at least what we were reading earlier in the pandemic, suggested that people were saying, okay, I can handle big city life during the salad days, but during a pandemic, we're going to relocate. So maybe this is just a temporary issue.
I think the weather plays a huge part in it too. I mean, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, all lost population. I mean, North Dakota, you look at the warm weather states, the only ones who lost population, I think, were Louisiana and Mississippi. And, I mean, people don't tend to want to move to a colder climate.
Are you sure it's
And
not
I also-
taxes?
Well,
No,
according to the story, it was business opportunities and housing costs.
Well, California,
so that's not Southern
lost
Illinois.
population. You could say, well, California and New York are big Democratic states.
Yeah, but you got a state like Illinois that has high property taxes, and under President Trump, they capped the amount of property taxes, state and local taxes, that you can actually deduct at $10,000. So a lot of people with, a lot of money might be going to states like Tennessee, Texas, or Florida, where they can, get by a lot cheaper.
I question the whole population total as a metric of anything. I mean, like Missouri's got 6 million people. You think we'd be better off if we had 7 million? I mean, I don't see no, I don't think so. I mean, in other words, I don't know why is this some kind of contest? You mentioned our population
It
as a
actually
country.
is, Ray.
Well, I don't think it should be. I mean, I don't know how many more tens of million people we want to grow as a country. I mean, I think
we don't want, but you're not saying we should want to lose. We don't want to lose taxpayers and tax base.
I just don't think. I think the quality of life is more important than the number of residents.
But we need workers who pay taxes and who
That's
take
right.
jobs.
I
The
don't
quality
think
of life is going to be
as
impacted.
Alvin said, I think Illinois, obviously every city has its challenges.
Okay.
I don't think like Illinois is doing.
Hey,
In the
Illinois
interest
is
of
a
time,
big-
let's move along.
Okay.
To Wendy Wiese, the Franklin County Health Director resigned, she said, Wendy, because too many threats and insults when she was trying to enact measures to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus. What's going on?
Well, I wish I knew, because if anything this pandemic has taught us is that we're seeing the very best of humanity, and unfortunately we're seeing the worst of humanity. I think there was the story earlier this week about former President Trump being at some public gathering and saying that he was getting his booster shot, and he was booed. So this finally transcends politics, and I think that instead of blaming any political figure, which I think I can certainly understand why people do it, I think we have to hold the individual citizens accountable. And Angela Hitson, according to Tim Brinker, has done. He's the presiding commissioner in Franklin County. He said she's done a magnificent job. But if she feels threatened, this is right for her and her family. But it's sad that somebody who is charged with ensuring the health and you know, safety of a county has to leave because her own health and well-being is being threatened by the very people she's serving.
Let me disagree with you, Wendy. I think it is politics. And I blame like Ann Wagner and Eric Schmidt and all these Republicans who knew better, who went along with Donald Trump on everything. And when Trump was calling Dr. Fauci an idiot, and suddenly at the COVID press conferences, there was the pillow guy and people like that instead of Fauci. And it has empowered these people to go after not only health officials all around the country, but election officials around the country. And like I say, I think that the Ann Wagners and Eric Schmidts, who I once admired and liked and who knew better, but who went along with Trump, I blame them. And I wish they could be visited by the ghost of Christmas, America past, America present, and America future.
Well, and this is not an issue that transcends politics, because show me the people on the Democratic side, if you will, who have been threatening public health officials.
Well, how about this?
I mean,
but maybe not health officials.
There's no moral equivalency.
Take a look at Kirsten Sinema. I mean, protesters followed her into the bathroom and to weddings that she was.
Right.
How about Lyda Crewson? Her home was, they threw paint on the house, broke the windows.
No question.
And
Was it Tucker Carlson whose home they camped outside of it? Was it
I
Tucker
don't know.
Carlson? I thought it was.
I'm not
Josh
suggesting.
Hawley's home.
I'm
Yes,
not
I'm sorry,
suggesting.
you're right, that was
People
I'm
camped
not
outside Josh Hawley's home,
Yeah,
right?
there's very
so
bad
I think there's
behavior
a general
on both
lack
sides.
of civility
But don't.
nationwide.
This is not in the case of health officials and more broadly election officials. Absolutely, there's plenty of bad behavior to go around. But on the subject of COVID and health officials and election officials, there is no moral equivalency, and these are not the same.
That's
there's
what
only
I'm saying,
one
though.
side.
It's don't
there's only
tread
one
on
side.
this fascination.
There's
I
only
don't know,
one
Ray.
Thomas
I think the country's out of control. Just
Yeah.
yesterday,
That's true.
a state senator in Chicago, Broadview, Illinois, was carjacked. Yesterday, a congresswoman was robbed at gunpoint in Philadelphia.
Absolutely,
I mean,
but it is not all.
The whole country's nuts.
But you can't take every
But why,
one of these.
but why wouldn't they be? They're not immune to crime.
Right, we're talking about
Yeah,
health
they're
officials,
not immune
and
to
they're
crime.
not equal. I mean, you can't say, oh, it's beyond power. It is, in the case of COVID and health officials, it's one side driving this, and that's the fact. And I'm not suggesting there aren't bad, but there's not a lot of bad stuff on both sides. This is not a matter of moral equivalency. It is not. It's one side.
I just find it interesting that they're turning on their own people who probably vote the same way they do, but they just basically, I have a job to do. I mean, I'm a doctor, and there's, so I have a job to do.
Yeah,
I've always found that interesting. Like, they'll turn on you like a snake.
Ray Hartmann.
Like the French Revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't tell
Ray,
me what to
let's
do.
move to St. Charles County, where the county executive, Steve Ellman, would like to pass a change to the charter so that the next county executive, could be him or could be someone who's running against him, would not be able to moonlight, like we're all doing right here, would not be able to hold a second job and get money. And Bob Onder, who's a state senator who is a likely candidate for county executive, is an allergist by trade, and he would like to continue being an allergist, he says, if he is elected county executive. So whose side do you fall on, or who do you back here?
Steve Ellman is doing the right thing for the right reasons. He proposed a charter amendment. It's something called good government, okay, which, of course, Bob Onder finds offensive. But, I mean, this is not even debatable. I mean, and in St. Louis County, it should be the same way. There is no analogy to like us. This is a full-time, well-paid job running a major county. A county executive is not a 50-hour job, as Bob Anders said. It's just absurd. The appearances of a county executive doing a side hustle as whether it's an allergist or a anesthesiologist or whatever it is it's absurd. It makes no sense, and it's like Steve Elman's completely in the right. And for Bob Onder is doing this faux outrage about it, like, you know, he can't possibly, you know, take this.
Okay,
it's just ridiculous. He's
the
wrong.
problem, though. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we're going to vote on this here. So why don't they just vote on it there? I mean,
They are. That's what he wants to do.
Yeah,
He wants a charter amendment. He's not.
Let the people
Right.
decide. But I don't have a problem. Like, if the people vote no,
Yeah.
then that's fine.
Well-
but I don't have a problem with either one of them having another job. I think that, look, we think a little bit too much of St. Charles County and St. Louis County, okay? Love them, big, they're huge, okay? But they ain't the president of the United States, okay?
Yeah, they should have
and that's like telling the mayor of a kind of a big town he can't be a dentist anymore.
Let me
he
tell
can't
you,
practice. That I don't want to draw that line, Ray. I think that goes a little
I
too
think
far.
you should draw it.
I think that when
If
you're
Mayor
talking
Jones
about
had another
public
job,
safety,
people would lose their
and I agree with you, and I agree with Steve Elman. Public safety falls under that umbrella now. And as he pointed out during, you know, this stuff, a lot of the things that will impact the job of the county executive or the county commissioner is going to happen in those off hours. And it's absolutely ridiculous to me. I mean, if Mayor Tashara Jones
Exactly.
was a tax preparer on the side, I would be very, very concerned about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't, Wendy. I mean, don't you want people from a variety of backgrounds serving on
Sure,
local
but let
boards?
them-
And
but
if,
they
if
need-
a person has to give up the job, the
With their
person's not going to
undivided
lend his or her
attention.
talents to public service.
But why can't they lend their talent on the county council, where that's completely fine? But if you are the county executive, if you are the person in charge, and frankly, I don't want my anesthesiologist or my allergist to have been up all night because there was a crash on the interstate. I mean, serious.
Then you pick another allergist.
Now, if he
but-
was a veterinarian, he'd be saying it's fine.
No, I wouldn't. I don't think it's you want the person's the idea that whether it's
Ray.
imagine the governor. Should the governor maybe be like
Maybe he
whatever
could
he does?
sell lawnmowers on the side.
Remember
think
when
our
the
governor might
lieutenant
do that.
governor wanted to get, years ago, the lieutenant governor wanted to have a side job because he said, I don't do anything.
It's not.
thought
It's
that was honest, but
I
there you
remember.
Okay.
I'm old enough to remember full-time Phelps. He was trying to make it a full-time job. No, these are full-time jobs.
You're old enough to remember when President Lincoln was working
I'm
as
old
a
enough to
lawyer.
remember too many
Wow.
things.
I'm the only one here.
Objection. Full-time jobs.
Now, on to Wendy
Objection.
Wiese. Wendy, I want to ask you about, I guess, the future, which is here, and that is electric vehicles. There are not enough EV charging stations in Missouri. The only problem is who's going to pay for them. Should it be Ameren? Should there be a tax
Oh, my
on
God.
EV cars? Should we take the NFL settlement and buy EV charging stations?
There are 2,000 electric vehicles, or there are 2,000 charging stations right now. Is that right? They said that's
Yes.
enough for right now, but they're going to need 8,000. But when I was driving economy cars, I don't remember Amoco or BP buying my gas because I was doing the right thing for the environment. The user, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, send your hate mail to Channel 9, but the user should pay for the charging. To me, that's it.
Now, if you're in a community and you want to draw people to like your downtown area or something like that,
Sure.
maybe the municipality
Or
could
the business
come-
district.
or the business come to the conclusion that this is a good idea.
Right.
But other than that, the idea that the state would pay to charge somebody's vehicle, like what? No.
Because we're the state.
Well,
we're
the
the
cars-
state.
the cars-
Isn't it part of the transportation idea? Like if we really think this is a good plan for the environment, we want electric cars. I mean, shouldn't the state have a role?
Then,
I
by the
don't
same
know.
theory, my daughter's 1993 Buick Skylark, we should be able to trade in for a nice car because it was, we're not contaminating
Exactly.
the country, and it's safer. And I just no.
I guess we should, maybe Donnybrook and century ago, they were arguing about the candle makers. We shouldn't all pay for this electricity. Listen, it's coming, okay? Whether people like it or not, assuming the country survives the next several years, it is going, electric cars are going to be part. It is something called, there's something called climate change and supporting the environment. This is infrastructure.
But wait,
for the
no
folks.
matter. So wait,
It
wait
is
a minute,
not,
Ray.
it's
Well, I
not,
think what Wendy and I are saying is, fine. I hope there's a bazillion
Right.
electric
Right,
cars,
right.
but you have to pay for your electric fuel. I mean, why is that such a bad
It's not,
concept?
because it's just, I just think it's going to be part of our
Because it's
infrastructure.
reasonable.
Don't get, most of these vehicle owners already got a tax credit, didn't they? Their car is
good for
already
them.
subsidized
And I
by the
don't have an
government.
electric car,
Yeah.
but I think that there's a lot of people that don't drive that collectively pay for our
Well, okay.
highways.
Bill
So what?
McClellan, I want to ask you about the Justice Department, which yesterday announced that it is suing the state. It's really upset because the state has this new law, I think it's called the Second Amendment Preservation Act, that the governor signed in his wisdom, that says that state law enforcement officials cannot cooperate with the feds when it comes to federal gun laws. So now the feds are just walking away from cases. And now they're actually going to sue to try and change that law. What's your opinion here?
Well, if I was the Justice Department, I wouldn't sue. I'd say if the state doesn't want to help us and doesn't want our help, fine. And if the result is more crime, and then the state can change its mind and say, you know, we made a terrible mistake. But I'd let the state do what it wants on this. And I mean, I think it's a foolish thing, and I think it's a sort of defunding the police from the right side. But I'd let the state go ahead and do what it wants if I were the feds.
I understand the spirit there, but the federal people in the federal government, in the Department of Justice, and law enforcement generally are there because they want to. Their role, their job, is to solve crimes and to enforce laws and to protect the safety. And just because we have a certain number of morons in Jefferson City that have for purely partisan reasons, political reasons that have nothing to do with public safety, have decided that we're going to like secede from the union on gun.
Bill,
Well,
we
there's
can
no
throw the
way we should
morons
humor
out
that.
there,
We
but
should
let the
not
state do
humor
what it
that.
wants.
We cannot.
Bill, a year and a half ago, I would have been on Ray's side making that same argument. But you know what? I'm fed up too, just like you are.
Well,
Like, hey, y'all play in the sandbox all crazy. Okay? We're not taking
But then
responsibility.
crimes won't get solved.
Yeah, we do
And
have
this
the bad.
wasn't this the murder of a police officer that wasn't solved? At least that was the example. That,
One of them.
Yeah.
Right. No, and I mean, it's not, I'm with you in spirit here, but we got to solve these crimes.
I
mean,
agree, Ray.
It's not just to make, what are we going to do?
Ray
Let
and
crimes
Charlie
be
agreeing.
unsolved.
Ray and
just to
Charlie
make a
agreeing.
point.
Ray's making a lot of sense tonight.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Okay, speaking of Christmas, Wendy Lynn Schmidt of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, columnist there, wrote what I thought was a very thoughtful column about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the longtime special that I think started on CBS. Well, in this, of course, you know the story of Rudolph, where Rudolph has a red nose and he's ostracized, and Hermie, the little elf, wants to be a dentist, so he's kind of ostracized, he's out of it. She does not want her kids watching this because it really doesn't send a good message about bullying and doesn't send a good message about people who are different. How do you feel about this?
I have to commend one of the letter writers, if you will, the respondents after the story, who was self-identified as somebody who had a disability, grew up in the 60s and 70s, and that he or she was teased mercilessly, as a lot of people are. He said that he commended the mother for obviously being a good mother, wanting to protect her child, but that Rudolph, when he was or she was a child, gave him hope. You know, that Rudolph was the victor in the end, and that as much as we want to protect our children, so much of whether you are disabled or able-bodied, so much of what helps us to grow as individuals comes from adversity. And I know I'm kind of paraphrasing, but I thought it was and he commended her again, said that her heart was in the right place. but that he hoped that she would reconsider. I thought it was a nice exchange on the Post
and
website.
I thought it was a thoughtful column, and I disagreed with it. But I mean, it made more sense than a lot of stuff I've written over the years. So, I mean, seriously, you know, she put a lot of thought into it. I went to see Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer at the Fox just a few days ago. So,
So you're very pro Rudolph right now.
We all are, right? I mean, that's how I feel. It's like, yeah, okay. They had a little message even when I was a kid, you know. And it's just, I think things like that aren't as harmful as they are made out to be. You know, it's, you know, that people have an intellectual discussion on that. But, you know, anvil falls on the coyote's head while run, and like everybody's laughing. Little kids are, you know, like, well, you know, that was kind of violent, you know. But I don't think it is. I think it's funny. But, you know, like I say, I think sometimes just it is what it is. He saves the day.
Absolutely.
He does save the day.
And
that's the lesson.
The moral of the story is he saves the day.
And speaking of Rudolph, it reminds me of the song Run, Rudolph, Run by Chuck Berry, the late great. And his son just released live at Blueberry Hill, a compilation of Chuck Berry's hits. So that might be a stocking stuffer. And a big shout out to Al Schweitzer, longtime viewer of the show who just turned 100. Longtime cartoonist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch who gave us the Weatherbird. So happy birthday, Al. Many happy returns. Well, you can always write us if you'd like to share your thoughts. Care of 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails. We love them. Donnybrook at 9pbs.org. And those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL. You can also listen to us on your favorite source, including Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. On behalf of all the panelists, I'd like to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating, Kwanzaa, and the best in 2022. But we will be back next week, so don't touch that dial.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.